Romans chapter 9, verses 17 and 18. For scripture says to Pharaoh, I raised you up for this very purpose, that I might display my power in you, and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth. Therefore, God has mercy on whom he wants to have mercy, and he hardens whom he wants to harden. Now, look, I'm not even going to make the obvious dirty joke there, okay? The Bible just admitted that God used Pharaoh to show off. He allowed Pharaoh to just enslave hundreds of thousands of people for however long to show how cool he was. And admittedly, the God of the Bible imposed on Pharaoh's free will just to keep showing off. What an absolute ass. If you think the Bible supports free will, then call us, because the show is starting right now. Woo! Today is August 6th, 2023, and I am your host, Secular Rarity, and joining me today is the always wonderful Jmike. What is up, man?
I am nothing really. I'm good. Just I look forward to this day out of the week every day, whether I listen or I'm on the show. I enjoy much more being on the show. I'm kind of selfish in that way.
That's fair.
Than watching, but yeah, so I'm excited.
And you don't have a choice in the matter, is the way I see it. You're just determined to have more fun being on the show than watching it. There's nothing we can do about that. Unless God steps in and like changes our free will or something, which apparently can happen. We've got evidence of that now. Yeah, but we've got some calls lining up, folks. But as always, we want more of them. We definitely want to hear from our theist friends out there. So give us a call at 512-991-9242 or hit us up on the web at tiny.cc/callaxp. As a reminder, the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. So all very wonderful, wonderful things. And again, I had no free will in reading that. I had to. It was going to be that way no matter how many times we rewind the clock. But before we grab those calls, Jmike, we have got to share your experience. We always, folks, are giving you a question or a comment that we want you to respond to in the comments underneath the video. And last week we asked you, wrong answers only, where did the Catholic Church really get all of its money? So we scoured through those awesome comments and we have our top three, and number three from Marcel Jansen's, where the Catholic Church got their money, Monopoly. That's actually pretty good. Yeah. I haven't played Monopoly in a while, but you know, when I did play, I was ruthless. I was that person that was like, no, we have to finish the game. And it's like, yeah, you basically won already. It's like, no, I will take all of your money and leave you destitute. It's just really.
I played not that long ago, and I always was like, oh, it's gonna take forever. We made some rules to speed it up, and it was really fun. But nobody else. I think I was like, hey, you guys, we can do it again. Everyone else was like, dude, I'm done. I'm cashed out. Like,
it's one of those games where it's like, after you play it, you're like, you know what? I could just not play Monopoly for another year. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Up next, number two, we've got from QC. The Catholic Church made its money by not charging anything for admission into heaven, but charging outrageous prices for the popcorn when watching their friends burn in hell. I like that. And also, it's a good business model, in my opinion. You know, you get people through the door. That's the biggest hurdle anyway. And once they're in, they'll pay anything to watch torture happening eternally, I guess. But number one, we've got from unnamed channel, Catholic Money Stream. Holy fans. I love that. I really, really love that. And then we've got a note from our commenter that says, whoever grabbed that domain should put up a satire site or release it back to the wild. I also think that is good. I like that. Holy fans. I was laughing about that before the show started, honestly. So as always, we've got another question for you. And I am going to throw this to Jmike first to get his thoughts. This week, we are asking you, what would be a red flag on a religious dating app? What do you think, Jmike?
I guess mine might be basic, but I like long walks on the beach and big gulps from the punch bowl at the service next week. That's probably a big red flag.
That's good. That's
maybe
good.
not go to the punch bowl.
That's
Take a
good.
long walk, see what they're about, challenge their beliefs, but don't go to the punch bowl.
Yeah, that's a good one. I was thinking something in the vein of like, because this one was hard, and I was thinking something in the vein of like, really love that eating of the flesh and drinking of the spirit, not real big into the communion thing, like a slight cannibalism kind of feel to it. I don't know. I'm sure our viewers and listeners out there have better answers than that. And so we are looking forward to that as always. So remember, in the comments section, give us your best answer and tune in next week to see when we reveal our top 3. So that is always a fun little segment that we do right at the beginning. And so you make sure to tune in early and on time so that you don't miss it. Now, we do have a couple of calls lining up, but again, we'd love to get some more from you folks. And while we are waiting for a couple of calls to come in, actually, Jmike, you and I were kind of talking about this a little before the show. But like free will question mark, what's up with it? Like, why is it a thing? Why does it matter? Does it matter? Like, is it important to even think about? Like, just give me some basic thoughts on this and I'll kind of bounce off of you. But
yeah, I mean, I guess the way that I'm assuming in this case of like free will, we're talking about like the libertarian free will, the sense that you could do otherwise, run, the common example, rewind the clock with all the, prior factors all the same. And, could you have done otherwise? The way that I try to think about this is like, I try to think about whether or not this is even a possible option. And so one of the ways that I think about this is like, imagine SR grabs a Coke or like some soda over another soda. Let's be not brand specific. Grab some drink over another drink. So drink A over drink B. We can ask this question. Is there an explanation for why SR grabs drink A rather than drink B? And if we say, yes, there's an explanation, then presumably there's going to be an appeal to some antecedent factors or some prior causes that explains why you end up getting the choice of A over B. And so those reasons or explanations seems to just fall on this side of it being determined, right? To give an explanation is going to take things prior out of your control. And so if there's an explanation, it's going to be determined. The other way to answer that question is to say, no, there is no explanation for why you chose A over B. And for that, then it's pretty straightforwardly like indeterministic, maybe, right? Like it's random, right? There's no real full explanation. But I mean, is that freedom? If I say I will for X and it's indeterminate, so I have this huge probability distribution where I'm probably going to get not X randomly. I don't really will X, right? So my views on that is that it doesn't even seem possible, right? Either the decision's determined or it's random. And then, there's the debate about the compatibilist stuff on free will, but that's a whole kind of other conversation.
Yeah,
so that's my thoughts in a nutshell.
I think you highlighted something that often gets overlooked in this conversation is, more often than not, I hear people lay it out as we either have that libertarian free will or everything's determined. And it's like, well, no, there is this element of randomness that could also be very much there. And that path, I think, is unfortunate in the sense of just like, well, if everything is random, then it kind of seems like we don't really have a criteria for like determining stuff, right? Like there seems to at least be some randomness in this world, but maybe that randomness is just due to us not fully understanding everything, But let me throw this to you, and then we'll go grab some calls here because we've got some lining up. But why is the conversation about free will so important? Why should we even waste any time on this? Does having free will or not having free will really change anything about like our moral foundation or like how we kind of engage in the world? What do you think on that?
I don't know if this is a popular answer. The way that I see it, since the way that I lay it out, I don't even see it as an option. it seems like gibberish to me. Like I'm not even really sure what's being expressed. I don't know that it's conceivable of for me to have such libertarian free will. So the answer to the question, like, is it important? I'm like, what important? It's like, is the king of the United States who has a beard, is he important? Well, there is no, that just like, what are you referring to in the world at this point? So I think I get what people are trying to ask in that sense. Like, you know, how does this affect moral responsibility and you know, whether we can have blame, you know, somebody could be blameworthy. And I just don't really find that very like interesting, because it sounds like appeals to consequences. I don't really care. Like, I'm not going to sit there and have my emotional appeal. Like, you know, it'd be nice to author my thoughts and choose these things, but I just want to know what's true. If I sat there and started with that position, I feel like it would only cloud my judgment. So, yeah, for me, I just think that all that stuff's kind of an appeal to a consequence. I care about how the way the world works first, right? Then I want to proceed. So I just don't really find it important, because I find finding truth to be important first. And if it happens to be deterministic, then the universe just doesn't give a shit how I feel. I mean, that's just at least my perspective. So I don't really see that it makes a difference.
Yeah. I as I've looked further into these discussions, it seems to me to not be super important either. The number one place that I see it often used is by theists who want to justify, you know, bad actions, right, and bad behavior. More often than not, I hear people say free will as being an answer to things like the problem of evil, right? The various theodicies out there, and trying to explain that answer of, well, we've got free will is number one place that I seem to find it. And it, for me, it ultimately just makes things worse. Especially when you've got examples like the one we read at the beginning of this show. Like, when you've got examples of God, you know, explicitly going against that, it's hard to kind of square that circle, I think. So
sure. Or like, one thing to think about is, like, think about the character of God in their view. He's free and he's always good. So he's imbues these properties of always being good and always freely doing good. And that's not like robotic. And so you can kind of ask this question: could God make a world such that agents just freely do good always? A friend of mine put it a really good way. You know, think of like the last time that you sinned. If you're a Christian, what you get for free, like the atheist gets for free in their lap when you say, I freely sinned, was that when you freely sinned, you could have freely done good. And they're going to go, yeah, God didn't determine that. Great. Okay. How about the time before that? Yeah, I could have freely done good. Okay. How about the time before that? Yeah, I could. Okay, great. So logically possible world where you do all these things freely, and God instantiating the world now, when you do a freely sinned action, he doesn't determine it. And equally, he wouldn't determine if you made a good action. And so there's just this world where you always make freely good actions like God does, or like people in heaven. And you get this really weird question of like, well, then if that's available to the God under your view, he had reasons to allow evil. And that's just saying the best world that's possible is the one with evil, which sounds insane, right? I mean, but yeah. So I think the whole free will thing just causes massive issues. You know, me robbing a bank and being stopped by the cops doesn't mean I didn't exercise my free will. And so if God just stopped me every time I went to rob a bank, you still get free will. You just don't get the evil actions. And there's just so many solutions to this problem that's just a really bad response to me.
Yeah, totally agree. And yeah, especially once you bring in this aspect of heaven, it's like, well, it seems like God can create an existence.
You already think that that's a world, and he imbues those properties. So it's like, what do you? Yes, exactly.
Right. But Satan, and it's like, wait, but did Satan do something that was against God's will? Is that what you're saying? Does free will violate God's plan? That seems like God's not very powerful. Anyway, we do have a couple of calls. So folks, again, if you have different thoughts on free will than Jmike and I, maybe you think it's deeply important. Maybe you think there's a really good example of it that will change our minds. Well, we have open lines. So again, 512-991-9242. You can give us a call or hit us up on the internet, the websites, the whatever, what other names are there? It doesn't matter, but tiny.cc/call AXB. You can talk to us either way. And we are going to grab a call, but real quick, I am going to tell you about something super great. You've heard it a lot already. You know, we've been telling you for weeks now about the upcoming annual Bat Cruise on Saturday, August 26th, 2023. And now we'd like to tell you that the tickets have sold out. That is awesome. That means that there are going to be a bunch of wonderful, wonderful people there on that cruise, hanging out and looking at bats. But here's the thing. We know that there are still people out there who want to join us, and there may still be a chance. There is a ticket waiting list, okay? And you can sign up for it in case there are cancellations. It is so easy to join. You just visit tiny.cc/batcruise, and you can be on that waiting list, and you will be notified if there are any cancellation. And for those of you that have your tickets, you will be joining the atheist community of Austin for a fun summer evening on the water, conversing with like-minded free thinkers and looking at bats. You'll get to hang out with people like this guy next to me, Jmike, Forrest Valkai, Christy Powell. I've even heard tales that the Johnny P will be there as well. So hopefully those of you that have your tickets still want them. Johnny's actually he's a good guy. He's a good guy. I know it.
We'll find out.
Yeah, you'll find it. Right.
We'll
Be a good skeptic. Be a good skeptic.
Yeah,
Keep
I'm
your ticket.
Right.
Go meet him in person. You know, have that personal experience. You know, do that. Try that. He told us it was okay to make fun of him, folks. It's all in good fun. But I guess let's grab a call. You ready for this, Jmike?
Sure. Yeah.
We are gonna go talk to Devon, he, they pronouns in California. Wants to talk about people worshiping two religions at the same time. That's kind of an interesting topic there. So, hey, Devon, you're chatting with Secular Rarity and Jmike. What you got for us?
Oh, hi. So I actually did not think I would be the first one to be called.
Hey,
sorry.
Congrats.
I'm just really shocked. Anyway, it occurred to me once that there are people who often worship two religions, two cultures, and two types of afterlife. Some people believe in heaven and reincarnation, like someone who can believe in both the reincarnation of Hinduism or Buddhism and the heavenly afterlife of Catholicism or Protestants. So it really makes no sense to believe in both, because don't all religions have a thing where that says you can't worship these other gods, saying that it'd be blasphemy or anything like that?
Yeah, so kind of. So like, first off, I'm not an expert on Hinduism. I'm not an expert on comparative religions or anything like that. But from my study of Hinduism, the flexibility that exists in being a part of that religious mindset is pretty broad, right? So there are people out there who take the label of Hindu for a lot of different reasons. And also it's worth noting that some of these ideas in different religions are mutually exclusive, right? Like I would definitely argue that if the God of the Quran, Allah, as represented in the Quran, exists, right, that claim against the claim of Jesus Christ being Lord, right, Jesus being the incarnation of God, like those are mutually exclusive. Those both can't be true at the same time, right? But with some beliefs, they can be, even though they might seem contradictory at first, right? Like, how does reincarnation really work with an actual like eternal hell or an eternal heaven? Well, there are ways that it could, right? Like, especially if you think about it in a sense of like multiple layers of heavens, which is very much common in ancient Near East scriptures and stuff. So I think both the Quran and the Bible do have mentions of there being like different versions of heaven.
It's like
it's kind of
layer view or something like
right.
that.
Right. It's like different layers. It's like going through a bean burrito. You gotta get
purgatory of the being a bug or whatever.
That's right. That's the mayo layer is just the sitting around doing nothing. But does that kind of help a little bit?
It does a bit, but in all honesty, it does seem a little too. It does seem a little like that perspective that of people where they feel like they don't believe in a specific religion, but believe in a higher power kind of thing.
How often do you run into this type of belief? Because like I don't really run into this that often. And when I do, it's maybe someone that takes like a perennial type of view where it's like all the religions are true, you know, there's just.
Yeah, I run into that one. I actually run into that one quite often.
Okay, so I don't as much. I mean, I think I have. I mean, would you agree that, well, we're pattern seeking, obviously, but we're really good. I guess I'll take it from this angle. We're really good at, if there's seemingly a contradiction, we're really good at making that work, right? We can play the accordion with text really well. And I don't think that we can just play the, like, you know, one accordion at a time. I think people can string together multiple accordions and play them at once and stretch it to as far as you can. So like you would agree that it's pretty easy to work hard at making that work, right? Like you can do that theoretically.
I can agree on that.
Yeah.
I can agree.
And that's the thing I would just point out is to kind of analyze the view and see if you can point out the contradictions. Because if you go through that dialectic where you're like, hey, you said this about this thing and that contradicts this other thing here. Like, how are you reconciling that? When they make the move to either concede and say, hey, I have some work to do. Like if they don't make that move and instead they just you see them in real time working hard to reinterpret, it might not even be worth engaging that other than just letting them know, look, the only thing you're doing is just post hoc rationalizing. I mean, you're just doing what you could do with any piece of data. You know, I can come up with a story because I had good Mondays for several weeks that there was an entity that desired for me to have good Mondays, had the ability to give me good Mondays, and no reasons not to give me good Mondays. And boom, every time a good Monday happens, I'm like, evidence for good Monday fairies or whatever. And so we can do this, like, it's pretty easy to construct a story.
I guess it just seems like there's so many different rules that contradict each other. Some that make no sense, sure. Some that just seem outright stupid, and honestly, it just at some point I'm like, what the hell? What is culture at all?
Yeah, and I think especially when it comes to like belief systems, right, and worldviews and all that good stuff. One thing that happens very regularly, and we can argue back and forth forever about whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing or whatever, but like it seems to be that humans do this thing where we do just kind of pick and choose stuff that feels better to us sometimes, right? Like we spend 30 years of our lives being a hardcore evangelical Christian, and then we read one book that mentions karma in a really vague, broad sense, and we go, I kind of like that too. I feel like that works, and I'm just going to incorporate that into how I view the world. That just seems to be something very innate to being a person, right? We do that with everything. Yeah, and so it's like when we come across certain ideas in our own system for how we navigate the world, we come across certain ideas that present problems to us, right? And a lot of times it's just easier to do that thing Jmike was saying, where we just go, actually, no, the reason that this isn't a problem is because of this thing that I just, read about yesterday or just realized 5 minutes ago when you asked me. That is that plus that let's just grab a little bit from here and there and mash it all together in one view. That is just very, very human. And yeah, unfortunately, it can be super duper frustrating when you're in a conversation with somebody, especially when they're trying to present their view as being correct and true. One thing I would definitely say, engaging in those conversations is worth asking is, what is the criteria that the individual used to pick those different beliefs, right? Like if you do have this belief,
I got this for that.
Say again, go ahead.
I guess I see that same thing with me. I believe that there can be an infinite number of universes, but that's really because it's a possible thing in theory, because in physics that has more merit to it, really.
Sure. And I think this is why you'll hear me, at the very least. I know a bunch of other people talk about this too, but you'll hear me talk about how important consistency is, right? And this is kind of why, right? Because I would argue that when it comes to accepting the claim that there is a potential for multiple universes, right? That is fully consistent with things like skepticism, right? With things like critical thinking, as opposed to, let's say, accepting that we have a soul that's going to be reborn into a different living creature or whatever. Like, I didn't do a great job with this life, so now I'm going to be a cactus or a beetle, which I could argue are better forms of life. It's being a human kind of sucks sometimes, as we've got these really terrible bodies. But the point is, like, we should strive for consistency as much as possible. And when we notice that either others or ourselves are just seemingly kind of blindfolding and just pointing to different beliefs and mashing them together, we should ask ourselves and others, why aren't we more consistent, and try to be as consistent as possible. And I think this is one of the examples as to why that's important, because what happens when you're not consistent is you start to hold these two different beliefs that are explicitly contradictory of each other. And so now you believe that, A equals not A, and that's problematic because that just doesn't seem to be the case anywhere. So, but any other thoughts you got for us, Devon, before we let you go and talk to some other people?
Yeah. If I had to put a term to what a description of what people's perception of God is like with or common people, it seems more comic book like than it is actual religious text like. Also, what your question on the free will thing earlier, I believe free will is an important thing, because without it, your individuality, your whole self, your everything about you would be synthetic and not organic.
Ooh, that's interesting. That could be a fun little topic. Do you want to go down that, Jmike, for a second? I don't know if that interests you, but that kind of interested me, because I think even without, so again, let's take the concept of free will as this. If we were able to rewind the clock exactly to a minute ago, would you have said any different words? Okay, like, let's think about it like that. In that sense, go ahead.
If I was aware of the clock rewinding, I probably would say something different just to see what happens.
Okay, so that's a good argument, right? Like, hey, I'd probably try it out, but the issue with that is you're already smuggling in the acceptance of free will there, right? So think about it like this. If we, because what you said was discussing that without free will, the idea of individuality wouldn't be real in the same way that we think about it now. Like, when we see somebody step out of their house and they got this just killer looking suit on, they're just looking just super, super spiffy. We think, man, that person is individual. That person sat down, they got those clothes and they put it together because that's them. That's their personality. They're just, they're individual. When you bring in that concept of that free will, right? I can see how that comes with it, right? Because this person sits down, thinks about a choice, makes that choice. That's different from the other people. But how is individuality lost in determinism? And what I'll kind of pose to you for this is, if I have two rocks in front of me, okay, and I have a rock hammer, a hammer that's specifically designed to break these rocks, right? Well, when I hit those rocks, the force is determined there. We can map that out with physics and mathematics, right? If we know exactly the weight of the hammer and where it struck the rock, we can map out exactly where the cracks are going to go. And when I do that to these two rocks, they're both now different. They both crack in slightly different ways, right? Due to the mineral composition, due to maybe on this one, I swung it a little bit harder, but all of this is still determined, right? All of this in this framework is still determined. So wouldn't individuality still be possible in a world that is completely determined?
Not necessarily.
Sure, I'd grant not necessarily, but it doesn't seem to be categorically ruled out in the same way that you were thinking about it a minute ago.
Okay, okay, so what you're, but basically, sorry, what you were saying was that the different types of rocks crack differently, correct? Even though the hammer is the same weight.
More or less. Well, really what I was going for was that even though in each scenario the consequences are determined and theoretically we could map them out from the beginning, each of those things, each of those entities still has and maintains that individuality, because there is something still different about each one of them, even in a determined world.
Yeah, you have differences, you have spatial differences, temporal differences. There's everything that separates properties that are not the exact same. But like, I'm kind of puzzled when you said you go back and you would answer just to try. I mean, you got to think though, when you go back, all the same factors are fixed the same. So like, think about if we were in a factory and we were making like green balls and red balls, right? Just red balls. And everything that explains why you get the red ball is all these very specific ingredients. And we go back to the machine, right? All of the same ingredients, we go back in time, all of the same factors. And we say, how could we explain a different outcome? Like a green ball, right? It's going to be really hard to say that it's going to be possible to get a green ball when you go back and look at all the factors. They only produce the red ball. And so similarly, when you go back, all of the factors are the same. It's not like there's something about you that's different that could help to explain why you get the different outcome. Now, if we got a green ball, me and you would look at each other and say, oh, well, someone must have put like green dye in it, right? Something must have changed here to get that different outcome. And so I'm not seeing how, with all the factors fixed, you're going to get a different outcome. With all the factors fixed, with the red ball making process, that you're going to get a green ball, right? It just seems seems like it's going to explain why you get that at each time.
Okay, but what if your intention wasn't to make a green ball? What if it was to change the shape of the ball to something else?
Well, I'm using these two things as two different analogies. The point is that if we look back and all of the same things, all of the same components are the same, how could you expect a different outcome, right? If we put everything in the machine the same way we did, how are you going to expect a blue ball or a green ball? You would have to explain that by something different. And so if we rewind the clock, there's nothing different. You're going to get the same outcome.
Yeah, but I feel like awareness has to be accounted towards that as well.
But you wouldn't have the awareness of the clock being rolled back in this thought experiment, right? It's not as if we're not saying that you as Devon, as person, exist for this time period, and then we pause time and then rewind it with you maintaining all of that knowledge. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that we stop the clock at any point in time and just roll it back 30 seconds ago. So anything that happened in that 30 seconds doesn't exist yet. Okay. And so it's basically, you don't know, you have no experience of the clock moving forward for a minute and then stopping and then coming back. Right. We're not saying, like, for instance, there's the thought of, hey, if I could do everything in my life all over again, knowing what I know now, I'd do things differently. And it's like, well, yeah, sure, because you've had the experience. There's no problem there. Nobody's pushing back on that. What we're pushing back on is if without Jmike's knowledge, if this were possible, if we could go back to last Sunday in the timeline, would Jmike still have cornflakes for his breakfast in the morning? Which I have no idea if he did, by the way. But you see what I'm saying? He doesn't have the knowledge of the next week that occurred, you know, to like think about and go, oh, okay, now let me try and make something different. He's just literally in the boat of waking up again on Sunday morning, just the same as he did a week ago. And so in that case, that's where Jmike's saying, what has changed in terms of the inputs to the machine?
Exactly. It's like you could rewind it back to Tuesday when you were working that day and just isolate just the machine. And you're going to say, could the machine, if we rewind the clock, produce a different color ball? And the answer is no. The ingredients and the things in it explain why you get that specific outcome. And so now you just apply that to brains, right? Someone's going to have to mount an argument that there's like some special magical stuff going on in the brain, you know, that they're going to have to give some argument or evidence for that. Otherwise, you know, the view that I have, or the view that I'm most sympathetic towards, I'll say that if the brain just is neural, you know, these neural, or mind just is neural states, and those are all the same and they're fixed, and the genetic dispositions I have, how my genes are expressed are all the same, right? All of that held fixed. It seems hard pressed that we could say we'd get a different outcome. That's all we're saying. I mean, you could salvage free will in a compatibilist sense. You know, but I'm strictly just talking about what's called libertarian free will, right? This being able to do otherwise, but
yeah,
I don't know. I was let you go ahead, Devon. Sorry, yeah.
Every time I hear the word libertarian, it's just all I can think of is people like Ben Shapiro.
Politics.
It's a bit triggering. I understand.
It's a different, different usage.
Right.
Libertarian free will doesn't have to do with politics.
More in that sense of that older version of liberty. But yeah. Any other thoughts before we let you go, Devon?
All right. Building on what you said about it, I guess I would have to say that if something has already happened, that there's no changing it, but that doesn't mean that there's no changing. There's no preset ideas. Like there's no, like, you know how people would hypothesize about traveling into the future. Well, then I'd have to think that there's no way to actually go forward in time. But whenever something happens in the past, it can't be changed.
Yeah, and that's fair. So, and I'd say there's a bunch of different people, of course, that do talk on this. Dan Dennett is a really, really good one for sure. So go check out some of his stuff, and that'll lead you down a path. You'll find a bunch of people who have talked about this for a really, really long time. And it's contentious. Don't get me wrong. It's not as if like Jmike and I figured out, the super solid, everything's right answer to this. We as people have been discussing this as long as we have been around writing and talking to each other, because it really does kind of feel like we have free will. But yeah, seriously, go check into this some more. Like I said, Dan Dennett is a great place to start. He is a compatibilist. So you'll get a good understanding of that. And call us back when you get some more info. And I don't know, maybe you can call us back and say, hey, this was the argument that, made me stop believing in free will entirely, or hey, Jmike SR, I've got the argument that's going to make you start believing in libertarian free will, because we always love that, man. So thanks so much, Devon. We really appreciate your call. And we always love calls with our non-believing viewers out there, because we can sometimes get into some really, really fun stuff. I actually think, tell me if you agree with me on this, Jmike. I actually think when you stop having the discussion about whether or not God exists, you get into a lot more worthwhile discussions in life. I really do believe that. What do you think on that?
I might be biased on that. So because Well, determinism and that type of stuff is what got me into philosophy when I was younger. Because it's like, I think a lot of people kind of, this is passed along or something, or maybe it's the Matrix kind of thing for you, but it's this thing you don't realize is kind of in the philosophy realm, and then you might travel down it. I never really circled back to the determinism stuff as much as I did in the beginning. But yeah, I think all like, philosophy of mind, there's conversations about, nominalism, Platonism. I find all that stuff so fascinating. For some, that might be so fucking boring, and I get it. I completely get it. But yeah, I find those conversations, and I think I'm biased because I have so many of the religious conversations, whether it's TikTok or here, that it is really refreshing to have them. But again, I do like the religious conversations when I meet a full preterist, like someone who thinks, all things have been fulfilled, like I love that conversation, and I'm like really giddy about it. So it just depends on the context. Philosophy of religion can get kind of pretty boring sometimes because it's recycled arguments, but yeah.
Well, if you enjoy these conversations, and especially if you think Jmike and I are incorrect about anything we've said here today on the show or in the past, give us a call. We have open lines, 512-991-9242, or visit tiny.cc/call-AXP. And while I've got you here paying attention, let me tell you about some ways that you can help support the Atheist Experience and the ACA. So you can become a member of this channel for as little as 99 cents a month. Click the join button right below this video, and that will give you access to special chat emojis. And I think it like changes your name to a different color, maybe gives you a little symbol next to it. You can also become a member for more than 99 cents a month, by the way. I don't know if we've ever said that, but if you wanted to be a member at a $5 or like $10 a month thing, you could do that too. So just things to think about. You can also send a super chat with a question or comment, which we will read live on air during the show, as long as they are YouTube appropriate. And we might read one or two that kind of touches on that line. It depends on how spicy we're feeling today. And then finally, before we go grab another call, I am going to let you know that there is a channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form. You just need to visit tiny.cc/AEN podcast. And there you can listen to all the latest shows from the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, the Nonprofit, and others on one easy, convenient channel. You won't have to look at our beautiful and smiling faces. You won't have to see how long our hair is getting. But if you want to, you can always still tune in here live. So your choice. Let's get some calls. Okay, tell me what you're feeling. You're looking at this too, right, Jmike?
We talked a second ago, but I was looking.
We've talked about free will a little bit, and I'd love to get back to it. But I think let's take a call that is off of free will just a bit. And let's go to Austin, no pronouns given, calling us from Texas. Hey, Austin, you are chatting with Jmike and Secular Rarity. What would you like to talk with us about today?
Hey, Jmike and Secular Rarity. I kind of got an idea about free will. So I'm sitting here in Austin.
Real quick. Hang on a second here. Hang on a second here, Austin. Because the notes that I've got for the call are I think a little bit more interesting than the free will stuff. It says Chapel of Sacred Mirrors. So it sounded like you wanted to call in to tell us something about that. If we can, let's do that first, Austin. And then if we got some time, we'll touch on the free will stuff. Okay.
Totally. Are you familiar with the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors?
I am not. That's why I wanted to talk about it. I don't know what this is, and I think it could be really interesting. So,
okay. What about the band Tool? We could start there.
I do know the band Tool. I'm excited to see how the connection is made.
Are you familiar with their album art, or have you been to a concert and seen kind of the graphics that go with their set?
I think it's Alex Gray that does their artwork, I believe.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Right? That is correct.
I'm not positive.
That's it.
Yeah. I dug that out of
man, that was amazing.
Out of the past. That's
some amazing trivia knowledge, but yeah. So what
great stuff. So
what is this?
Poughkeepsie, New York. Kind of going on right now. He is building a chapel, the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors. He had an art installation, which was the Sacred Mirrors, for a while in New York City. And hold on, I'm turning my air on in my car. It might switch over to Bluetooth. I might have to push a button for a second.
Please don't be driving.
If you're driving, we're gonna have to get off with you. Are you driving?
Well.
Oh, I'm back. I think I can hear you now.
Yeah, are you, Austin? Are you
Sorry
driving?
about that.
Austin, are you driving?
No, I was doing an errand in Walmart, and I just hopped back in my car in the AC.
Okay. Just stay from driving. Just stay parked for a minute. We don't want you risking your life for this or anything. But okay. Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, Alex Gray, Tool.
Yes. So he's building a chapel in Poughkeepsie, New York, and it just kind of encompasses all of the theist ways of being that I believe in. And I really enjoy sharing it with other people. Like you said, you weren't even really familiar with it. And
give us some understanding of what you mean by this encompasses the way that all theists behave or something. I forget the exact terms you used. I'm sorry,
about all theists. I'm just saying my way of theism of being, and it's kind of just the premise that we're all artists. We're all co-create. We have one life to live, and to just give it our best. It's up to us to make this world as good of a place to pass down to the future generations as possible. So just to constantly strive for your highest truth.
Is there a truth claim in this?
Yeah. So real quick. Yeah. I mean, there's part of me that's wondering about that, Jmike. But the other thing that I'm wondering about is there's two things. So I don't know that is something that comes across in all versions of theism for sure. And if that's how it comes across for you in your version, that's great. I'd just love to know how you got to those, bullet points as being what your religion's supposed to be about. And then the other one, I guess, is that it doesn't really sound like there's much.
It sounds like an art gallery.
Yeah.
It sounds like I feel ways about stuff about art.
Yeah, which is fine.
Dismiss that.
Some people would consider it almost art church in a way. I wouldn't be surprised to find some atheists in the crowd whenever you were to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with Alex Gray, and I don't. I guess I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to know if there's a truth claim, because if there's not a truth claim to it, and it's kind of they're using this loose kind of spiritual language. And I'm looking at this briefly online.
Yeah,
I don't have any problems with this. It's not really in my wheelhouse to have a discussion about. But if there's a truth claim about the way the world works, I would like to know that. But it doesn't seem like that's what this is about. So I don't really know.
Oh, just that there is God.
I don't really know how fruitful this conversation really will be, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just that there is a God.
Oh wait, hold on. On the advisory board, there's Deepak Chopra. So
yeah, I saw that too. I saw Deepak Chopra.
Maybe I should look more into this.
Was a part of it. But yeah, I guess let's see if we can if is there something about this particular space, this particular ideology that is making a truth claim about the world? Are they saying that spirits are real? Are they saying that supernatural stuff is real? They are saying that there is a God.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
apologetically.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a place that we could push back on, and I guess for there it would just be simply what are they doing to demonstrate that? How are they getting to that conclusion? Just the standard old, what do you believe and why? So yeah, if you agree with them,
mostly from personal revelation, personal experience. They're very apologetic about entheogens and drugs, you could say, for lack of a better word. Just that can help an artist have a visionary experience and kind of have a God experience. Me personally, I'm an alcoholic, so I haven't had a drink in 4.5 years, almost 5 now. and I attend meetings.
Okay.
Not as often as most do, but one page in the big book, it says, see where religious people are right and make use of what they offer. So I kind of skip the 12 steps and just kind of cling on to that one sentence on page like 84 or something. It's like, these are my religious people that I see where they're right, and I make use of what they offer.
How are you determining that they're right, though? How are you determining that they're right? Because it sounds like what you're doing is just picking whatever feels good and works in your system. And like the general comment of like, listen to what religious people say that is true is like, yeah, but that's like, listen to everybody that's saying stuff that is true. As weird of a thought as it may be, but like murderers can be correct about stuff, you know? So like, how are you determining what's correct, what things to pick from the religious?
The visionary substances include such drugs as marijuana, hashish, DMT, LSD, mescaline, psilocybin, MDMA, 2CB, ketamine, ayahuasca, and salvia divinorum. No, I don't, but I have.
Okay, hang on, Austin. Like, I think that's really interesting. I'm happy to talk about spiritual practices, religious understandings that have to do with drugs. A very interesting subject to me. I've looked into this as a hobby for a very, very long time for a lot of different things. Okay. Fine to do that. But the question that I asked.
How was your day? Tuesday.
Right. The question that I asked first was, you said you took this statement from like AA, which is deemed like a religious organization. You took this statement and you said, I like that. I'm going to incorporate that into what I do with my life. Okay. So I got you muted for just a second. I'm going to unmute you here in 30 seconds. I'm just going to ask my question real succinct and I'll put you right back on. You'll probably hear a quick beep. Okay. So Austin, that statement about taking what is true from the religious or from religions, my question on that is, how are you determining what is true to take from those religions and to incorporate into your belief or worldview or whatever? Okay. So I'm going to unmute you. Probably going to hear that beep. All right. You're back on, Austin. What would you say to that question?
So whenever I went on my little tangent there, I was just quoting scripture. So I flipped open the Mission of Art to page 118. And
I get that, and it's all good. No worries. There's no anger. There's no animosity. But it'd be great. It'd be great if we could just answer this question, right? Because we still have some time, Austin, and we could go to the free will thing here in a second if you want, for a few minutes. And I think that'd be fun. I know Jmike and I would love that. So just.
You would.
This question as succinct as you possibly can. It's totally cool if you're just like, hey, honestly, I don't really have a method. But again, what is your method for determining what is true from religions to incorporate into your view as the AA thing said to do? What method are you using here?
Reading the religious texts and really taking to heart what resonates with me, what I find is true.
Okay. So, but wouldn't that criteria technically result in people also coming to the conclusion that the Quran is true or the Vedas are true, or like, doesn't that
resonates with the reader? Yeah.
But is that how we determine truth in the world?
Yeah, what if they come to the conclusion that way that the Earth is flat, or that
right,
or
that
white people
everything
are better than black people,
or that everything you believe, Austin, is incorrect? Like, what do we do in that scenario where somebody says, "Well, I took this to heart and I really read the scripture, and my scripture says all your scripture is wrong"? What do we do there?
I believe every soul is on its journey, to get oneness with God and find, cosmic unity. And okay, I'm not here to discredit any other people.
Austin, I gotta come in here. We're just asking if, like, presumably you came to these beliefs and you think that they're true. Your methodology was just like you feel like it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Austin feels ways about stuff, therefore the stuff is true. That's what I hear. Am I wrong?
You still there with us, Austin?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Is this like the most rough sense of the view? You feel ways about something and you think it's true, and so that gives you indication that it's true. Is that how it works?
Yeah, roughly. You could say that.
So okay. Notice that in that what's not housed within that is a critical analysis, something that could check your work, right? Something to verify it. Maybe something that could falsify it. Maybe you could set out and say, if I find Y, that's going to be a problem for my view, and it's going to point out that it's likely false. If you're just saying I feel ways about this, I mean, like, I don't know, if you stood in a library right now with all of, every book that's ever been written, your percentage of knowledge would be about what in there? Like close to 0%, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Do you think that, like, if any of that knowledge just came to you and you felt really confidently about it, that it would be right? Or would you like want to have something to independently verify it the same way that we can be confident about those books, right? The things that have the information. That's not just like I felt like writing it down or something like that. It was like, no, this is corroborated with the reality around me. I had this imagination in my head, but this methodology helped me show that it's reflective of the reality that I live in. Do you think that, like, it'd be better to add this extra layer of protection, or do you think it would be worse?
I feel like each one of us is on our own independent journey of the soul. And
well, hold on. I'm asking you, I just want an answer to the question, not a different question. I'm Mike. You're talking to Schmike. I'm not even mean to point to.
That's okay. I'll take Schmike.
Schmike's
if we could get the crew to just change that name under.
Schmike's question was answered, but I'm not Schmike, right? I'm Mike. So Mike's question is, do you think it's a bad thing to have this extra protection on your beliefs where we have a critical analysis to independently verify it? Or do you think that's a bad thing? Which one would you prefer? I'm just asking.
No, I don't think that's a bad thing. You can.
Great. So why don't you use it in your method? If it's a bad thing, why are you not using it?
Analyze my beliefs. So I test them daily. Calling into the show is a matter of me testing it and saying, yeah, that's what I believe.
What would falsify
I got
your
nothing
belief?
to lose.
What would falsify your belief? Yeah. What would make? What would point
finding evidence that goes to the contrary.
That's just like the trivial answer. Like that's what it would mean to falsify it. What would be the thing that would falsify it?
If my experience was different, if I didn't have the experience that I have had or heard different experiences, but from most of my experience, they're overwhelmingly
That wouldn't falsify
positive.
it. That wouldn't falsify it because your criteria is whatever Austin thinks about X means that that is true, right? So if we were just in a different world where you just had different experiences by your criteria, that wouldn't actually falsify the beliefs that you have. It would confirm them. They would just be different than what they are today. But again, this is like us with the last caller when we were talking about rewinding the clock.
It's not just me. It's like as a whole, these paintings and this artwork, like everyone can have this experience of God. That's the magical part about it is.
Yeah, but everyone doesn't have the experience of God. But that's the issue, Austin, is that everyone doesn't have an experience of God. But hang on a second. We can in just a second.
I want to point out I'm not laughing at Austin and just laughing at the crew putting Schmike down there.
Yeah. Right. But no, seriously though. But the issue, Austin, is that we're in this boat of people saying, like, for instance, you and we can transition into free will if you want after this, but the issue is that you're telling myself and Jmike over here that, well, anybody can have this experience of God, and then we go do the thing that's supposed to give us the experience, and like more often than not, we don't come out with that experience at all. Or on the other hand, we have this experience that is like totally, completely contradictory to other people, even though we're doing all the same stuff, you know? So that's where the issue comes in, especially when you say that your criteria for determining what is true is really just whatever resonates with an individual. If that's where we're at, then it kind of seems like we're never gonna figure out what's true. And I bet that honestly, that's not the method that you use in your daily life. I'm sure that isn't the case when, you know, you go to your mechanic and your mechanic says like, oh yeah, of course I replaced your radiator, you know, and then you go look at it and then the radiator's not there. Like he just took it out and you're just looking at your mechanic going, hey man, I don't think you did the job. And the mechanic's like, no, it resonates with me that I did. So therefore it's true. Right. So give us a response to all of that. I know I shouted a bunch, but, and again, if you want to move into free will now, like we can absolutely do that. So.
Yeah, no, just the artwork, it kind of speaks for itself. And the free will aspect is, say I'm looking at a big bag of mushrooms right now. Don't I have the free will to choose to eat them right now? Or I could come to the Bat Cruise here in a few weeks and share it with a bunch of friends.
Please don't do that.
Yeah, please don't. Do but like come to the Bat Cruise if you want. Don't illicit drugs. We're not gonna. Drugs. But no, like again, it with what you just said, all I heard was I have free will, therefore I have free will, because you smuggled in the concept of saying, well, I have already this choice. I can do this or I can do that. And it's not to say that there aren't potential choices in front of you, right? It's just to say that, like, what are you actually doing to determine whether or not you have those choices? And it looks like we lost the call anyway. Good. So
okay. I'm very those words are awesome words to hear. I'm very glad that that's the reality that we're now have shifted into. So,
but did we have the choice, Jmike? Did we have the choice?
It didn't make a difference because I'm happier. So, you know.
Either way, we're feeling good. So let me tell you about some other wonderful things we've got here. For instance, our limited edition t-shirt this month is Atheists Are Good Without God. So visit tiny.cc/merch ACA and you can get them now. As always, they will be gone at the end of the month, so you better act fast. And finally, we want to send a big thank you out there to our awesome crew who put this show together every single week. They are hardworking individuals. None of them have any free will except for the cat. The cat is the only one that has free will. And you'll have to tune in next week to hear the demonstration as to how we know that that's true. Sorry, next week host, by the way. Sorry, I just put that on you, but come up with something, I guess. That being said, if you are in the Austin area next week on August 27th, that's not next week. What is it? Anyway, if you're in the Austin area on August 27th, 2023, please join us for the live broadcast of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. Talk Heathen will be hosted by 3 awesome hosts, Forrest Valkai, Jamie the Blind Limey, and Schmike. No, I'm just kidding. It's Jmike. And then the Atheist Experience will be hosted by Johnny P. Angel, Forrest Valkai, and Jmike. Once again, doors open at noon, and we hope to see you there. Hopefully people will come down for like the whole weekend, like hang out for the Bat Cruise and then stay for the live studio stuff, because it is well worth it, you guys. You will enjoy the crap out of it. Let's talk more about free will. You ready for this, Jmike?
Sure.
Let's go to Alan, no pronouns given in Texas. You say that we do have free will. Well, cool. This is a good chance. You're talking with SR and Jmike. We don't think we have free will. Tell us why you feel differently.
Well, why you tell me why you don't think you have free will? You have mind.
There's no demonstration of it. There's no demonstration of free will. Your turn.
I gave an argument at the beginning that it's not even an option. If you explain why you choose A over B, the explanation will appeal to antecedent factors that will determine the outcome. And if there's no explanation, it's going to be indeterminate. So I don't really see where the free will fits in. I mean, I guess you could make a case in it being random, but then whatever you will isn't going to come true because it's random, right? So, so it's like, it's very likely that you don't get the thing that you will.
Two different options for you, Alan. Pick whichever one you like better.
Okay, I'm confused. Let me see if I understand. My concept of free will is that I have choices to make, and then as a consequence of those choices, there will be outcomes, and I have to live by them. I do not believe that outcome is predetermined by some deity. That's my interpretation of your question. Am I correct? Am I correct?
Are you trying to shout back to us what our thoughts are? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm
just
saying
trying to
you're
lay
asking
out?
me a question. If you're having to have a discussion, that means we have a differing opinions. If we do not, then there is nothing to talk about. But if there,
do you think that libertarian free will is true? That's what we're talking about. Nothing to do with gods yet. I mean, it could. It just
God doesn't come into the equation.
Yes, I don't believe there is any God to begin with, so there is nothing to consider. I mean,
then we'll get right back to where we were.
Right. It sounds like what you're saying is that if presented with a glass of orange juice or a glass of lemonade, you go through some internal process as to consciously picking one cup over the other. And if somehow it were possible to rewind absolutely everything to that point where you were given that choice, you could pick the other glass. Is that what you think?
Kinda. If I made a choice, pick one over the other, and then as a result there was a negative consequence, and I was given a choice to rewind and had that experience still in my consciousness, then
you're assuming that the knowledge comes with you. The knowledge of that experience doesn't come. Yeah, it doesn't come with you. It's like literally stopping a movie halfway through. Okay, if we stop Lord of the Rings halfway through the first movie and rewind it, like, the actors still go through everything, right? And none of the characters in the movie have any knowledge of what happens later on. Like, technically, the story's already written. We already know, spoilers for anybody that apparently hasn't figured this out yet, but we already know that Frodo throws the ring into the fires of Mount Doom. We know that that happens, but none of the characters do in the first book, because it hasn't happened in the timeline. And if you go to the last book and you read the last chapter, you'll go, my gosh, that's how it ends. But then when you go back into the book, into the first one, and you read it, all the stuff still happens the same. So that's what we're saying is you're the character in the book, and you can't go to chapter 12 and have knowledge of it. You're still on chapter 1. And in chapter 1, this is what you do.
You won't be engaging with our argument. Just real quick, Alan, I'm sorry. I know I want you to respond, but just real quick. You won't be engaging with the argument if you just don't engage with the argument. We're setting up very specifically we are holding everything fixed. That's important. When you make this having the knowledge, now it's no longer fixed. We're talking about the exact same things fixed, right? Same exact.
So your example of that book and movie is incorrect, because none of the actors wrote that. Some other third person, the author of the book.
It's an analogy. It's an analogy.
So yeah, but look, it's not a complete analogy. That's why
it fails. The analogy actually fails because we don't know what happens in the future. And in a story like Lord of the Rings, we do, but all analogies break down at some point. But again, it'd be phenomenal.
I agree, but...
Hang on. It'd be phenomenal, Alan, if you could engage with what we are saying. So I am going to throw, hang on. I know I know what you're trying. I know what you're doing. I get it, man. Okay. But we're going to start all over again. We're just going to rewind that clock. Jmike, what is that question that you would like to pose to our awesome caller, Alan, no pronouns given, from Texas. Jmike, go ahead, and then Alan, we will unmute you. You'll hear a beep, and you will be able to respond. So, what you got, Jmike?
Well, we'll start it this way. When you chose A over B, is there something that explains why you chose A over B, or is there no explanation for why you chose over A over B? Let's just start with the true dichotomy.
And you are back on. I'm sure you're hearing a beep. Go ahead.
Okay, that depends. If your question has to do with, say, I'm an engineer. If that question has to do with an engineering solution, then yes, I have a host of previous experiences I can draw from. But if your question is regarding orange juice,
the question was, is there an explanation for why you pick up A over B? That's all the question is. Is there an explanation, or is there no explanation?
Yes.
Okay, great.
In my scenario,
great. So I'm just trying to see on which side of the true dichotomy that you're on. An explanation for picking A over B, no explanation for picking up A or B. We've ruled out the indeterministic kind of concerns. Now, what I'm saying is you're on the side of determinism, right? Because if there's something that explains why you chose that, and we go back to the exact events, all of the same factors are the same. All the prior conditions are the same. Nothing has changed. What you want to say is that you can break this causal chain, like just yourself as an agent, break all of this massive causal chain of explanations behind you, and just break it and say, I have the author to just, do this, and now I've broken the explanatory, the explanation for those causes, right? That's the view you would have to opt for. Whereas when we have this causal history, you're going to get the exact outcome that you get because the thing prior is going to explain the outcome. It's not like as if in some other possible world you get a different outcome. You get the same outcome. Do you understand?
Okay, so I'm trying to. That's what I'm trying to understand what you're asking. If what you're saying is I work in the computer world. Let me make an analogy to a computer world. When you boot up your computer, there's something called a ROM, a BIOS. It's a predetermined program. That sequence, you have no choice. Once you power up your computer, it follows that pre-programmed steps. But once you load your program, say operating system, and then you have some application, then that application has choices. So that's what I'm looking at. If your previous experiences is always the same, your initial starting point would be the same.
It doesn't have choices. There's antecedent factors prior that prompt the change.
Okay, so what you're talking about is in the computer
that's
analogy,
the thesis of determinism. If there's some antecedent thing that determines the subsequent thing, that's determinism.
Yeah.
Right? It determines the action.
I'm not following.
If a domino, just think of it like a domino, right? If the domino hits the next domino, we roll back to the second domino, and we want to say, like, could the second domino have just not got knocked over and fell? Well, the antecedent, when we look at that situation fixed, the thing that's fixed in that situation is the first domino hitting it. It's not as if it's going to produce the second outcome. It's not like the domino could just be like, nope, I'm going to break the chain. All of this stuff is fixed. It's going to produce the same result. You'd have to give some argument that agents and brains, for some reason, can just break this causal chain and just make like free decisions that aren't fully determined by the antecedent factors prior to their decision. But that seems strange, right? Because like clearly you didn't go shopping for your brain, right? You didn't go to the store and shop for your brain. You didn't like pick which genes were expressed, your parents, right? All of that stuff, it seems like the window for that ability to choose otherwise just gets dwindlingly smaller, right? Gets tinier and tinier. So I guess I would just ask you, if you have antecedent factors that are determining it, where does the free will sneak itself in, right? How does that work?
Okay, so talking about your gene analogy, there is no guarantee that just because I have a certain cancer gene that I would get it. Environmental factor plays into that. There are random events that play into it. So if you keep all
you're
of
saying
those
it's
the
determined
same,
by the environment?
Yeah, randomness doesn't help your cause for free will, though, because free will has to be an agent that is able to break that chain, just like Jmike is talking about. And if
Which
you're
is it.
granting that there is a chain, and then what happens is that just random shit just occurs every so often, bro, that doesn't give you the agency that you're going for when you say free will exists. And you're in a lot of your responses, it's been really interesting because you've been responding with things that do very much seem to be determined. And then you're just saying, but there's choice. And you're just kind of like throwing it in there. Like, and that's what we're trying to say is that, so like my way of going about this would be saying like, well, hey, how do you actually demonstrate that free will exists? And it sounds like what you would say to me is, and could be totally wrong. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it sounds like what you would say to me is, well, we just experience free will. Well, it just seems to be all around us. And that's not actually a demonstration of it. And again, like I just said, every time you've responded to Jmike, you've actually responded with things that are determined. Like you mentioned a computer booting up and the fact that it just has this code in it that it can't do otherwise but follow the pattern. And it's like, yeah, man, that's what we're saying. Like, so
yes,
yeah,
at some point, then your application takes over, and that's the free will. Once the application takes over, then you exercise free will.
You think computers have intentional states and they're exercising free will? That's your view? That's what you think?
At some point, yes. Yes, that's the whole notion of AI. Why do you think they're so concerned of AI? Because at some point,
AI is not about free will. Yeah, AI is not about free will. AI is about bringing a massive amount of data into an item that we have created specifically. Hang on, stop. All AI has to, as a base, have information put into it. That's why there are currently people all over the world taking about 60 to 90 seconds to stare into a silver ball right now to receive cryptocurrency, is so that they can train the AI on what human eyeballs look like to determine people from non-people. So that just is definitely the case, man. Like, and if you're trying to say that AI demonstrates free will, my only response to that is going to be basically the same thing we've been saying, which it seems like the reason that AI gives any particular response is because of a particular prompt. And even before that, because of the information that it had available to it to begin with. All of this seems to follow a causal chain like Jmike was talking about. So again, where in this chain of events do we get this agency that now has the ability to, I don't know, access information it never had before or come up with a different response to this prompt? Where in this chain is that agency that you're talking about?
Okay, so we are talking about a bunch of things and we're mixing about. Okay, we have to start from certain initial state. If I were not born, I would not be calling your show, correct? So the fact that I was born enables me to make this phone call. So if I have never been born, I would definitely not be making this call. Now, could I have been born and not made a choice to make this call? Yes. That's my free will.
There it is. There it is, Alan. You just did the thing that we've been saying the whole freaking time. You're like, it's like as if Jmike were having a conversation and I said, hey, Jmike, did you know that chocolate ice cream is objectively better than vanilla? And Jmike goes, oh, no, I didn't know that, SR. What's your reasoning for that? And I said, well, see, Jmike, ice cream is a particular substance that is oftentimes, but not exclusively, made from frozen milk of some variety. And adding chocolate to that changes not only the flavor and texture, but the color sometimes as well. And chocolate's better. I gave no explanation for the chocolate being better. I just freaking said it.
You just filled in some space and then restated the claim.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
So like, let's just try this in action. Alan, think of a city right now. And then tell me what it is.
We got you unmuted, Alan.
Okay.
Think of a
The
city.
response. Okay, I hear the bit. Your example of chocolate was not an.
Well, I just want to ask
Yeah.
you because we got other callers, and so let's just try this simple. Let's just try this as simply as we can. Think of a city, and then tell me what city comes to mind.
Back on with us, Alan.
San Francisco.
Okay, why wasn't it Paris?
You asked me. I told you my choice.
Did you choose that, or did you recognize it and then report it to me?
I don't follow the question. Could you explain?
Did you seriously did you seriously like just pick that, or did you notice the thought come into your head? Did you author San Francisco? Did you really choose that, or did you notice the thought?
I don't follow. You asked me a question.
Think of another. Give me another city. Give me another city.
Why I didn't give you another?
Give me another city.
Yeah, that's the point.
Vancouver, Canada.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Did you again when that came up? Did the thought come up and then you reported it to me? Right. You're like trying to say that you think your thoughts before you think your thoughts, right? Like the thought comes about and then you report that thought.
Oh, there's a mechanical thing that happens in my brain, and that results into some thought.
That determines the choice of the city that I asked you to choose a city. It determined the city. Both times it did.
Was choose a city. Yes, your question was choose a city. Now, why I chose those cities, we can talk about it, but why didn't I choose Paris is not part of your question. You said choose a city.
That's fine. Let's just stick with the first thing. If that's what you're really concerned about, that's fine. You gave me the answer that there was antecedent factors that determined it. Great. Welcome to determinism.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if that's your thesis, that's great. But we could do what SR and I were trying to get you to do which is give the actual account. But when we did that, you would just restate the claim. So I'm just trying to now just demonstrate to you.
If you're asking me how I came to that question, to that answer, that's a different question. Your initial question was, give me a city, and I gave you a city.
Yes, and then we moved on from that very, very easy thing, okay? Okay, here's what we did, Alan. Jmike said, let's take 5 seconds to walk through this together, to demonstrate this together. And one of the ways that he's trying to do that is by going through a thought experiment. That thought experiment being, let's take an easy decision that seems to just be right in front of all of us, seems to be super duper easy. Let's just think of any random city in the world. There's freaking thousands of them. And after we make that decision with air quotes, all we're doing is going to the very next step, which is trying to give an accounting for that decision. And what we're saying is, hey, when you look at that, it kind of seems like there isn't really an explanation there. It kind of more seems like instead of you sitting down and having this thought process in your head where you battle back and forth between different cities and maybe Paris, France is going to win. Maybe it's San Francisco. Maybe it's New York. But no, in reality, what happened is more along the lines of the thought just popped into your head somewhere out of seemingly black void. And then you just relayed that thought to us. And then when we say, hey, so where's the free will in there? Your response is, well, it just is. Does that help clarify any of this?
No, because you didn't ask me how I came to that decision.
Well, that's
My
okay.
brain makes certain.
That's okay. That's okay. So we'll let you go for this time, and we'll call us back in the future, Alan. Please. I really feel like we walked through that really well. That I think is one of the best kind of, thought experiments to play with. That was one of the things that helped me start going down this path. it's not something I think that I'm letting you go, by the way, Alan. So thank you so much for giving us a call. And
it's
I
not
do
really
hope
my
you think,
go-to, but this isn't working. So let me try.
yeah,
to just
I like
express.
that one just because
Yeah.
it's a really good starting place.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
think that is the answer. But like, I think that
Sure.
when you really sit down and wrestle with that concept, it does put you in this boat of being like, oh, shoot, I actually really don't know how I came to that conclusion. And then you have to go think a little bit further about it. I know this was something that
I Googled something the other day, and
Mhm.
like in my head, I don't know if this really applies or not, but like I just do stuff where it's like I can almost sometimes see this separation. Like I wanted to Google something the other day, and somehow I found myself in Google. What I typed was snowball. I was like, what the? What has nothing to do with what? So I don't know. There's just times where I'm just like, it's not that hard for me to grasp it. Maybe I just have a weird brain or something. But there's things like, there's this like first order kind of second order thing going on, and I'm a victim of just noticing myself like, wow, that's pay attention.
Yeah.
in whatever sense that that means. But yeah,
it's a dense topic, and I remember the first time I ever started touching on the subject. I remember whoever I was listening to was like, hey, if this is giving you like existential dread, just put it down for a while and come back to it, or don't. And I think I did. I think the first time, like, I stopped that conversation and like didn't pick it back up for like 2 weeks. And it's dense. It's tough. I get it. And we've actually got a couple more free will calls, it looks like, but I'm going to try to break it up for you wonderful people at home. And we'll take a call that is not about free will next, but I am going to tell you these awesome super chats that we got in. We got $10 from Thomas Watcher saying, love you guys. I just wanted to say that I lost my 51-year wife. I think I am getting better. It can happen. And I know Thomas. I've met with Thomas. I've spoken with him. He is a great, great dude. And just sending you lots of love right now, Thomas. And I'm sure everybody else is out there. I know it sucks, but yeah, you're totally right. It absolutely can get better, man. And I think it will. So
yeah, I can't imagine. We all will, go through like these heavy things. I've been fortunate not to, have a lot of that happen in recent times and stuff. And so you forget about when you're divorced from it for so long, you kind of forget about it till you get these other people that are sharing their experiences. So yeah.
And sometimes it takes those moments to remind us how valuable community can be. So definitely, this is your place, Thomas. Up next, we've got $4.99 from the always around, always super awesome Greg Markowski saying, thanks for the show. I hope your Sunday chores went well. And we've got Native Atheist has been a member for 1 year, donating $50 freaking dollars. That is awesome, Native Atheist. Hats off to the production crew. Thanks for the show, guys. Well, thank you, Native Atheist, because you are helping keeping this stuff going. So let's talk to a former megachurch pastor. You ready for that, Jmike? This will be fun.
Yeah.
We are going to talk to Jason, him out in California. Hey, you've got a question for us, and you were chatting it up with Jmike and SR. Jason, what is up?
Hey, guys. It is a pure pleasure talking with you. Love this show. Stumbled across this show probably, about 6 months ago, and it's pretty much all I'm listening to, just eating it up. Real quick before my question, just to give you some background, was a mega church pastor for many, many years, several decades, and it just started pulling the string a little bit at a time, and have now been deconstructing over the last 10 years or so. It's been an incredible journey, and I feel a whole lot more freer. And love where I'm at. But here's my question for you guys, and I think it's probably one that a lot of your listeners, especially if they are deconstructing or newly, thinking through different types of paradigms that they would never touch before. One of the things I struggle with today, so I'm calling for advice, is how do you post-church, post-God, post-Christianity, how do you latch on to something larger than yourself and have renewed vision and mission to drive? So let me just back this up really quick. When you're a believer, especially when you're a pastor, You're going to win your city for God. You're going to impact the world. You're going to save all the heathens, right? You're going to do all these amazing, phenomenal things. And then post deconstruction, there's a little bit of a lag. You get back to regular life and you get back to your job. And that's the portion that I'm struggling with. I'm not struggling with the deconstructing the answers, the new world that I see through new eyes. What I'm struggling with is finding and putting new purpose in place. So I would love to hear from you guys. How did you process through that?
Yeah, let me give you.
As SR, you're way more like
I was a former. Yeah.
Mine's slightly different, coming out of a different space. So yeah.
So let me give you two kind of quick responses to that. Because I'm going to take one in a more literal sense, and I'm going to take one in a more like, this is what I think religious people are actually getting at, or recently deconstructed, deconverted religious people when they say that. So like, the one literal side I'm going to take is really, really simple and easy. Nothing. I didn't fucking do anything because I always had that stuff. I always had that stuff. I always had a feeling of connecting with other people. And I bet you do too. I bet you have always had this feeling of like knowing that you can make a difference in the world. You can, free will conversation aside, you can do good things. You can be a valuable member of society, whatever that means. There are things that get you out of bed in the morning. There are things that just light that spark inside of you, even when you were a believer, right? You had all of those things. Sure, maybe all of it was technically couched in this understanding that, well, it all comes from God and God's super great and yada, yada, yada. Doesn't that make me feel cool? But I bet if you really went back through all of those experiences, you'd discover that when you bought that new car, or you fixed a bike for your neighbor's kid or something, that really you weren't thinking about God. You weren't thinking about the Bible. You weren't thinking about ghosts or heaven or hell or any of that junk. You were just thinking about what it means to be a person. And so the reason I go this sense of it, which I do think is a little bit more literal, not exactly taking the spirit of what's meant by that. And I'll give you my answer in a second. But the reason I take that literal approach is because I really do want to push back against the religious having co-opted so much about what it means to be a person. Like, because we hear that all the time, that the only way you actually have any desire or compassion in life, all motivation, all love comes from this religious understanding. And that's just demonstrably flat bullshit. And we can see that. We know that. We've been through that, you guys. All of us have. And so it's okay to say that, hey, actually, I'm not putting shit in that hole, quote unquote, because there's not a hole to be filled. There's no space that's empty now. Instead of me adding on magic to all of the beauty that I have experienced in the real world around me, now all I have is all the beauty in the real world around me. And that's great. There's no deficiency there. There's nothing that needs to be filled. Okay.
Yeah, you had this mirage of dirty rags that you now realize, like, you don't have to look. I don't know if you have kids. I mean, I don't, but I couldn't imagine like having, giving birth to some, witnessing the birth of your child and then being instructed by what you believe to look at that infant and declare that it has come into the world like filthy rags. Right. And you gain this, I mean, the purpose within that to recognize that you don't have this really austere, weird, self-loathing kind of purpose, that you're not even worth anything and you have to give all glory. It gives you so much right in your own aspect to carve that out. I mean, for me, a lot of it was, I love philosophy, and I know a lot of, I go into it with the mind, a lot of what could be going on is a lot of word games and things that cloud what's really actually going on in the world. But it's for me, it's awesome. It's like giving me this, I'll wake up, I'll read, whatever book or watch some video, and it really makes me feel like I'm trying to track the world around me, which is like a really cool project to me. I don't know if I'm hitting the mark. I might be fucking missing the mark every time. But that gives me so much purpose. Like I love, outside my family and friends and all that stuff, I just love knowing that I'm not going to know everything in the world. And it's like this race to try to get as much content as I can. And then and when I have conversations with people, it's cool. It's like, oh, I know that thing. Like, I know what polyploidy speciation is. I'm not a big biology guy, but I know what that. I can talk to you about this. And it's makes those little small individual experiences like extremely meaningful for me. I don't know. Sorry, I feel like I'm cutting off the SR. But
no, I agree. Yeah. I think that was that's exactly the point that I was making. And just to finish up, and then I'll give it back to you, Jason. The other side of this I'll take is the more kind of, being a little extra charitable, bending over backwards on the viewpoint there. But what do I replace that feeling with? The answer is skepticism, critical thinking, secular humanism, community that's focused on the real world around me as opposed to an afterlife or something magical, right? Like, again, I still totally stick with that first answer in the sense of I didn't have to replace it with anything because I already had all this stuff, and those things aren't exclusively religious. But if you really want, hey, let's take the question as charitably, as seriously as possible. What do you do when you don't have this God belief in your life? Well, there's lots of other systems out there that seem to be incredibly worthwhile in terms of understanding the world and giving us kind of a framework for what we should do next and where we should go. And that connection to a thing bigger than ourselves that transcends us. I don't like the flowery, magical, spiritually aspect of that, but I like the aspect of it being something very demonstrable, very grounded in the real world, in the sense that humanity as a whole is something bigger than my individual human self here. And that's what I put my faith, I guess, in, if you like. That's what I believe in. I believe in us. I believe in this world. That's bigger than me. The universe is bigger than me. There's all kinds of phenomenal freaking things out there for us, man. And again, like I said earlier, I really think once you step away from the supernaturally religious-y stuff, that's really when you get to discuss the big questions in life. So, but yeah, we shouted a bunch.
Maybe you just want to go help people. Yeah, Jason, let's get your comments. But maybe I just wanted to add just one thing that maybe now you can actually go, if you wanted to go help people, I don't know, homeless or whatever, if you find purpose in that, and you're now like, I mean, you're not doing it as this kind of expectation of you. It's like coming from a real place within you, if that's what you want to do. And so I don't know, I just find, at least for each individual action that you're doing, there's something like more beautiful about that than probably each individual action you did prior. But anyway, Jason, we're kind of just spewing, so let's give you 30 minutes to talk.
Yeah. Super good. I appreciate the wisdom and insight. It's interesting. A lot of my friends are deconstructing, and I'm noticing it more and more. It could be that they are talking to the guy that deconstructed it. It's a safe environment, so maybe that's why I'm hearing about it. But a lot of career believers are coming to the same crux. For me, deconstructing was not difficult to process through as a skeptic, and I'm eating it up. I'm just chowing all that information, and it's resonating with me. And even if I could go back, I would not go back. So I have a great, base that I have, a foundation that I've started to build on. What hit me out of left field was this sense of, wow, when I was a Christian, it was like God was my skeleton, and now there's a sense of being a little bit made out of cartilage. I'm kind of waving and flowing in the wind a little bit without that construct. And as a believer, things were I had all the answers. They were all spoon fed. I knew what I was supposed to do. A plus B equals C, and we were having big campaigns, and we're out to win the world. Post that experience, I'm learning how to live in the gaps. And in the gaps of life is where I'm finding beauty, and realizing that if this time I have right now is limited, which it is, then I need to, eat as much of it as I can, experience and smell and see, and just be in this moment. But it's not something that, as atheists, we talk a lot about, especially if you have that history. It's a challenge. It's a big challenge, and I think that we need to help people navigate through that. So I appreciate the wisdom.
Yeah, and thank you so much for your thoughts there. Before we let you go, Jason, I definitely just want to mention two awesome nonprofit organizations, if you're not familiar with them, Recovering from Religion and the Clergy Project. Both of them are just absolutely wonderful, places to go and speak with some people. And even if you don't really have this thing that's like really like bumming you out or keeping you, in a state of anxiety or whatever, Recovering from Religion is still there to talk. They're just people that are trained that can help you kind of bounce some ideas off and so forth. And they'll help you get connected with the Secular Therapy Project if that becomes something worthwhile. But the Clergy Project, if you haven't heard of that, Jason, I think you would be very much a member of that. It's literally an entire organization for people who are former pastors of some kind who have stepped away from faith. So definitely a cool place for you.
And Jason, I wanted to ask you a question before you go. When you left the faith, how did it impact your relationships? Was that like a really drastic? I'm just for myself, yeah.
You may not have enough time left in the show.
I've said, and this is the thing that is so common that I want to highlight this exact thing because
I think anyone leaving, we all have specific journeys. It's all very, very difficult. I think there's an added level of complexity when you vocationally do that. And it's your job, and it's your community, and you're leading that community. It was devastating. I went through a divorce because of it. My partner did not want to go down that path. I lost my full community, and I'm using that in air quotes because it turns out it may not have really been the real sense of community that I was longing for.
But you still believed it to be true. So, there's at the time, that's important. Yeah.
Right. I have a very, very small family, so just 3 or 4 members left, and they decided they did not want to be a part of this deconstruction. So it was a very, very high cost, and I went and had to kind of redefine myself vocationally. So lots of difficulty when you leave, and I think that it's a shame because I think there's so many people that would want to have that freedom. I have way more freedom today. I used to preach about freedom. I used to preach about pure grace and great love and all of these things. And some of those things are true, but I never, ever experienced freedom until today. Like I feel free today. Now I feel like I'm missing some direction on, okay, so what do you do with the rest of your life, and where do you impact, and where do where do you actually grow and be and have relationships? Those are things I'm still working on. But as far as legality, like I feel free. But there's a lot of people that did not want to take that journey with me.
Well, I'm not looking at the chat. I'm sure that the chat is absolutely blowing you up with love. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm almost positive that they are. My last question I wanted to ask, do you think that with that impact of how it is with your relationship, or with how it impacted all of your relationships, do you think that that's right? Take all the philosophical arguments, all these, debates. Do you think really what gets in the way for a lot of people is this consequence that's looming that they're going to understand? They're going to lose their friendships. Their family might turn their back on them. I'm curious if you think, since, I don't come from that side and you're really well ingrained into it, how much that prevents people from leaving. I'm just kind of curious on your opinion on that.
Yeah. And again, I might be raising the hair on some people's arms here. This is just my experience, and what I went through specifically for me. What I realized is that the love and grace from that community was incredibly conditional. We used to say, it's a fairly common phrase, I think, in contemporary churches today: just come as you are. You don't need to clean yourself up. Just come up and come as you are, and God will clean you up, so to speak. But that's not true. Like there is a whole community that has a set of rules, and we need to adhere to those. And different points of view and different thinking is not really tolerated. And that's what I experienced. So as this started to unravel for me, and I remember exactly where I was. I was in the middle of a sermon. I didn't have a vision. It wasn't a spiritual moment. It was just me having internal dialogue about, I think I'm done, while I'm standing on stage preaching. I realized that when I pulled that string, it was all going to come undone. And this grace that we preached about actually doesn't hold up when you have somebody like me vocationally going through that type of experience. So yeah, pretty traumatic. And I experience real grace now, actually outside of the church and who I am today, because it doesn't come with a lot of conditions.
I fucking love your attitude, Jason.
Yeah.
Seriously. I'm feeling it right here, man. This is a great call. So
yeah,
and right back at you guys. Listen, right back at you. I don't have a local community where I can process, and so you guys, I think you know this, but you just need to be told again. These podcasts are incredibly, incredibly life-giving. Like, and I don't mean that from the spiritual, woo-woo type of way. I'm saying that there are people out here listening to this that are eating this up, and I'm one of those. So thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.
No, we understand. We were viewers ourselves, and it's helped shape a lot of the way that I think. So
and before we move on, Jason, don't hang up, okay? Do not hang up. I'm not dropping you. I'm going to put you back in the queue for a second, okay? Because we really did have a great time chatting with you, and I think your story is one that unfortunately the bad parts of it did happen and have happened to a lot of people, but I totally agree with Jmike. I absolutely love your view on this, man. And I'm so glad that you are coming through this stronger than ever. And don't forget, we got all the super cool places. We got the fan run Discord that we'll be hanging out in after this. We got the fan run Facebook pages. Please feel free to be hanging out with us there at any time, but do not hang up, Jason, because I am putting you back in the queue. All right, brother?
All right. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
I really needed a call like this.
I know.
Really,
seriously.
Really good on perspective on a lot of things.
That is why we all freaking do this, whether we have a choice in the matter or not. That is the why. So we got one more call, folks. We are going to end this show talking about free will. But before we do that, have you ever said to yourself, gosh, I really love the content the ACA creates, and I wish there was a way I could have it all the time? Well, you can. We've got it because we now have 2 24/7 live streams going on all the time. AXP TV delivers a constant stream of shows, clips, and specials from the over 26 seasons of the Atheist Experience. And now Heathen TV provides you with clips from Talk Heathen. So watch or simply listen to your favorite hosts and discover some hosts you've never heard of. Just check out tiny.cc/AXPTV and tiny.cc/Heathen TV to join in the fun. And don't forget, folks, every week we are asking you to share your experience, and the prompt for this week is, what would be a red flag on a religious dating app? So get your answer in the comment section below the video and check us out at the beginning of next week's episode, because your comment may be read on air. We always pick our favorite top 3. So let's go to Wisconsin. Dustin, he, him, wants to talk about free will. Dustin, you are chatting it up with Secular Rarity and Jmike. What you got for us today? Hopefully you heard the other calls on free will and you have some thoughts, but tell us where you're coming on this. You think we've got free will? Why?
Yes, I do. I think if you were to go back to my childhood and not teach me English, and one version of me doesn't know English and one version does, the person that knows English is going to make different decisions.
Yeah, but
that's determinism.
Well, in each case, there's 2 different people that are being determined on 2 different things.
We've got to be talking about the exact same thing, right? We've got to be talking about the agent doing the exact same thing.
Language informs decisions.
I agree with that, but again, the issue there doesn't have anything to do with free will, right? So again, we're in this boat of being like, well, okay, hang on a sec.
Okay.
So if two different individuals, right, learn different languages, right, of course they're going to interact in the world differently.
You're going to go back in time. No, same individual. You're going to go back in time. They're going to have all the same neurons firing in their head. Everything's going to be the same thing.
They wouldn't have the same neurons firing because they know a different language. They wouldn't have the same neurons firing in the same pathway because they know a different language.
They're making decisions with it.
No, they're not. So again, we're in the same boat of saying if we go back, and then there's this cause, there's this determined thing that gets us to this conclusion. That's not free will. If you're saying, if we rolled the clock back and instead of learning English, I learned Spanish, and then no language, and then my decisions would be different because of that. That doesn't equal free will. At no point in time do you ever have this agent that's coming in and stopping the causal chain, right? Am I just confused?
No, you're right. You just gave different antecedent factors that determine a different outcome. Great. Right. Thank you.
Same person.
Perfectly compatible with me and secular's view. Mm-hmm. Nowhere is libertarian free will smuggled into that at all.
You would be making different decisions with the same exact frame.
No, look.
But you couldn't be.
Look, we have to recognize there aren't two people. So if we went back and we could do this and we just evaporated the language that they did, the decisions that you didn't, nowhere in this analysis did you give it an actual analysis for free will. You just gave two different situations. One, a human who has language, we rewind the clock, and we strip away the language, and it would make different decisions for them. Well, yeah, because you've changed. Well, for one thing, you've changed the point of the thought example where the situation is fixed, and you now created two different situations: a fixed one where that I have English, and a fixed situation where I don't have any language. But both fixed situations, because you wanted to split them for some reason, both of those situations, fixed in their own cases, determine the outcomes in their own cases. You didn't do anything. Like it. I don't suggest. Let me put it this way.
I understand. I agree.
Dustin. Last sentence. I do not suggest defending free will by defeating free will. Right. I just don't advise that. That's just me, though.
No. You ain't got to get snippy. I was learning. Okay. How about this? If you drop a rock out of a plane from 1,000 feet, yeah, I understand it's going to go to the same spot every single time. But if you drop me out, I don't think I would, because I don't have a predetermined plan as to how I'm going to flail my arms, or if I'm going to find Jesus at that moment, or what.
I think see that you recognize that the issue with what you just said is you're talking about something that you're trying to say has agency, and you're comparing that with something that I think all three of us agree doesn't have agency. I don't think Jmike or I would say that a rock.
To the rock. I'm not comparing it to the rock. I'm saying I agree the rock would fall in the same spot every time.
But you're saying the reason that a person wouldn't
on the way down.
Right, but if we know what all of those, if we know exactly when you're going to flap your arms like a bird, or exactly when you're going to kick and flail and stick your tongue out, right? But that isn't right. But that doesn't defeat the concept of a causal chain that goes back, that determines what's going to happen next. What you're saying is there's just a question mark in the future for where the dominoes eventually lead up. And that's fine that that's the case, but that doesn't explain the dominoes that have been in a line and have all fallen in order before it. And that's what we're trying to get at. Like, I get why free will seems like it's there. And it's because of this exact reason, that it seems to be the case that when we do something like roll a marble down a hill, we feel better about being able to calculate all the little bumps and little hiccups and stuff that happens. But why is that not possible if we did that with a living thing, with something that has this agency, right? Like, theoretically there's no but see, right there, you're just saying that. You're just bringing that in and saying, well, yeah, but agents can make decisions. And it's like, yeah, but how are you demonstrating that?
Yes,
And the way that you're saying that you're demonstrating that, hang on, calm down, Dustin, calm down. Hang on. I got you muted for a second. The way you're claiming that we can demonstrate that something doesn't work out in this very mathematical, again, rolling a ball down a hill, right? That's probably something everybody has done in a basic physics course, calculating where the ball will land, right? Also, probably we didn't get it exactly right because there's some other factor that existed in that classroom that we weren't sure about. But talking about the fact that there are potentially future events that could change the outcome that we just saw, like, yeah, like I agree with that, but that doesn't talk about the things prior to that. And that's what Jmike was getting at, is he was talking about the things that led up to this moment, right? So like, again, I don't see where anything comes in to break that chain, especially not one in a sense that is specifically like conscious. I sat down and thought about this and picked the best one. You're back on with us.
One scenario, I put my elbow out. One scenario, I put my knee out.
I get that, but
it's compatible with determinism,
right?
You're not doing anything by just being like, oh, I stick my arm out, as if like, damn, the deterministic walls just collapse around us, and like we have to, or even the compatibilist sense, whatever sense that you have determinism here. It doesn't do anything. It's perfectly compatible with compatibilism, ironically using those words together, determinism, and libertarian free will, assuming that that's a thing. But the fact that you just state that you can move your arm or not, it doesn't tell us whether or not it was freely willed, right? There's still this idea that in the scenarios where you move your leg or your arm, they were determined by stimuli or by your neurophysiological makeup, right? Or the environment, or a combination of all the things. And since that's the causal chain that I'm speaking of, right, all of those prior things, or the things that are working in the moment, all of those things, that amalgamation is always going to determine the next thing that props up. If you think that you can get another outcome, it's going to have to be random. That's not libertarian free will.
Right.
So just pointing out that I move my arm does nothing for free will. I just don't. I'm not really convinced that the free will debate.
Hold on.
I'm not trying to be mean. I
go out every spring and knock on doors, trying to get the most progressive, student. I can't even think right now. Student councils.
That's okay.
On the board.
That's okay.
If you had the free will,
you would be
able to free think clearly, right?
It's pointless for me to do that.
Were you determined to think? Were you determined to be cloudy in that moment? Were you determined to be cloudy in that moment, or did you freely decide to have your brain get scrambly? Right? I mean, just think about it for a second. I just don't really get where the
and what
in every part of our daily lives, it's like it'd be weird.
But your question isn't worthwhile, and here's why your question's not worthwhile, is because consequences still happen in a system that is determined or a system that has libertarian free will. There are still consequences to actions. And if we go about living our lives in such a way that we never interact with these consequences, especially when they're ones that we as individuals or a society deem problematic, well, then we're going to live in a world where the antecedent factors, the thing that exists before this scenario right now, we're going to live in a world where people can just go around murdering each other with no issue. And that's not good, because that leads to more consequences of things we don't like. So like the idea of a person, for the specific thing that you had talked about was voting, right? Like you go out and you volunteer for a particular candidate, doesn't even matter which one, but like you saying, oh, well, maybe I just shouldn't do that because they were just going to vote for whatever they were going to vote for anyway. That is a different scenario, because in the scenario that we're talking about one where you as another individual have interacted with an individual. And that is part of the conditions before the hand that will lead to an outcome. And again, even if we can't absolutely calculate every single little criteria that goes into any particular consequence, that still does not give us this space of, yeah, we could just do it differently however we felt like. That is something that we still need to have a demonstration of, and it just doesn't seem like there is one. So,
I'm not going to knock on doors this year to prove to you that I can make a decision. I've done it for the last 9 years.
I don't see how that. That doesn't prove. Yeah, that doesn't prove the thing that you think it says.
It's not like look. This is so trivial. It's not like me and Secular don't think we. It's not like when you knock on our door, we're like, oh my god, we didn't think we lived in a world where people knock on doors. Like, oh, free will is true the second the knock hits. Right? Like, this makes no sense. Your argument is so confused. It makes no sense. You come and knock on doors is compatible, or is just, it fits determinism. It fits compatibilism, where determinism and a different notion of free will are compatible with each other, and it fits libertarian free will. You can't appeal to something that equally can be appealed to all of these theses. It doesn't help you, because it equally applies to each one of the rivaling theories. Right. Yeah. So it's just not helping you in that sense. I mean, I gave an argument, loosely gave an argument at the beginning of the show. When you choose to go knock on the door, we can ask this question. Is there an explanation for why you choose to knock on the door? Or is there no explanation? And if there's an explanation, you're going to start looking at what explanations are. There are these trails of little things prior that end up leading up to the outcome. Right. So what it means to give the explanation is to appeal to prior things that explain the outcome, which is what determinism is going to be. It's going to be all these things that determine the outcome necessarily. And then the other option is that there's no explanation, which is random. So I gave an argument that libertarian free will isn't even possible. There's no option in that dichotomy for libertarian free will. There's causal chain of events, and then there's indeterminate, chancy, maybe quantum events that could be random, assuming a certain interpretation of quantum mechanics. That's your options. I don't really see where free will is even an option, to be honest.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's a great place to leave it. Jmike and I have beat this dead horse this whole time. And Dustin, we do appreciate you calling, and we hope you'll call back in the future. But yeah, I think it would be a worthwhile venture to just delve a little bit more into some people that have talked about this for a while. Because again, we got from pretty much everybody today. It was this, oh yeah, like there's all these things that make me do this. But I actually do have free will. And it's like, right, but where? Like, where does it come up? You're agreeing that there's all these factors that lead to this outcome. But hey, that's okay, because you know what, Jmike? We were determined to be here, right now at the end of the show. We were determined to have some good calls, some fun conversations, all that good stuff. We are determined to be in the Discord after show right after this, answering questions from people. There is nothing we can do about it, but if you rewound the clock, we might do something different.
Well, why don't we throw a wrench in it? We start the compatibilist conversation about free will being compatible
all
with
things,
which I'm very sympathetic towards myself, but
sure,
it's still determinism. It's still
it still is under.
We're not going to do that to everybody. But yeah, I did want to mention that I think me and you agree on this, but maybe I wasn't transparent. We're very specifically talking about libertarian free will.
Absolutely.
In these conversations.
Because anything else is compatibilist. Anything else falls into the compatibilist framework, which again, it's like the best way I've ever heard that described is like, it's like your shoulder, right? Like you technically can move your shoulder, to all these different positions, but there's a determination on the broader sense that's like, I can't put my shoulder, on the other side of my body and stuff. Yeah. So but again, that all is determinism. It all is acknowledging that this chain just seemingly does go back forever. So, but yeah, again, I thought it was fun. I enjoy these conversations. I always enjoy hanging out with you, Jmike. You are always fun, and you bring in lots of really good stuff that I have to go and do homework on. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah. I guess thank you for giving me something to do in between.
I'm a little upset at you though that I'm not going to see you at the end of the month.
I know. I really wanted to be there down there for the back cruise and the live shows. The good news, though, is, folks, is that there are some actually really, really cool people that are going to be there. Not Johnny P. I mean, he'll be there, but maybe not as really, really cool as.
There's a question about the coolness.
Right. We do. We have a question there. But you know what? I believe if we could roll the clock all the way back to Johnny's birth, he might be able to choose to be cool. I don't know, but
I think he's determined to be Johnny not so cool, man.
That's just what it is. I'm done with these jokes. I'm done with the free will jokes, guys. I swear.
We're the worst pairing for that.
We really are. We just make bad dad jokes the whole freaking time. And I don't think neither of us have kids.
Did you hear about the kidnapping at the school?
No.
It's okay.
No.
He woke up.
Oh, good. My God. All right. We're going to get out of here. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody that joined us live and everybody who's checking us out over the next week or so. We always appreciate you. Remember, check out our website, atheist-community.org, for the latest on what's happening here. And feel free to contact us at tv@atheist-community.org. As always, we have a lot of freaking fun. And the reason we do this is because we're determined. We don't have a choice. But we'll see you next week because you don't have a choice in the matter. So see ya.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to stop questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your eyes.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.